You're listening to Science and Saucery, a show dedicated to adding life to your years. And now your hosts, registered dietitian Julieanna Hever and scientist Ray Cronice.
Welcome.
Hello, hello.
It's another question and answer day.
But this time, we're taking your questions.
Which is going to be a lot of fun. I don't know what they are.
I know. I'm so excited. Okay, so I used to do this when I would write my veg news column. I'd have to come up with questions all the time. And so sometimes when I was stuck on a question, I would just post on my Facebook friend page, not my professional plant-based dietitian page, but just my Julieanna Hever page. And I would say, do you have any questions for my column? And I would get like an outpouring of great questions. So I thought, why not do that here? And I figure we have so many different places that we can do this on. So we started with my page again on Facebook, and we got some really good questions. In fact, we got a lot of questions. I want to answer all of them. And I'm going to surprise Raymond, which is even more exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I don't know what's coming.
I know. I get to drive this episode. Yay! All right. Well, let's get started. So the first question is from Leah A. I'll just do last name, the first letter. So Leah A. said, I would love to know about, quote unquote, eating less often, how to do it, what to expect, and suggestions/tips. I started eating one meal a day to lose weight and increase my health span, and it is, all caps, hard. I'm sticking with it, but would like to hear your thoughts. Love the podcast. Thank you, Leah. Do you want to start?
I can start.
Okay.
So, Leah, the biggest thing to think about is that all food and eating is habit. Everything you believe you know about food and most of the sort of inner core drives are all about habit. And people make up so many excuses about why they're eating. And then there's the other side that wants to just, it's sort of amazing. Anybody who isn't eating in a socially normal way is often, labeled as having eating disorders. And of course, I think, the fact that a lot of the world is, in fact, the majority of the world is chronically overnourished, that could be construed as an eating disorder too. And I am not in any way trying to impugn those people that have real issues. What I'm saying is I think it's a disservice to the real issues, the real deep issues that some people have, to blindly paint that brush to all people. Our going in assumption is that you're not broken. And we take that, and we don't believe most people need to be fixed. They actually are fine just how they are. So your appetite is normal. But if you think about it, if you deluge your body with food all day long, even if it's healthy food, the idea that it has to be ready and anticipate all these feeding events. And if you think about it, let's think about a triage. Think about a person bringing them into the emergency room, right? They're bleeding profusely from the head. Cutting the head off isn't an option. So we've got to actually think about that patient and that person we go through these level things. Are they losing blood? How much blood they lost? I mean, what an emergency does is it looks. So if you think of your body kind of like that patient out there in a calorie scarce world, your body is prioritizing food and it's saying, okay, I'm eating. And we haven't lost those genes that survive in scarcity. And so I'm eating. And so the body, it's not surprising that once you turn on that process, that the whole body wants to shift its attention and focus towards extracting as much nutrition and energy out of that meal that it possibly can. And our way to deal with this, say post Atwater, meaning the early part of the last century or the late part of the 19th century, our way to deal with that is to say, okay, let's just eat lots of stuff that doesn't have any energy content in it. But, that's just making a big assumption that the main thing your body keys off of is the energy content of food. What if some of the other energy elements or the other nutritional elements?
Whoa. You've never said that like that, and that's kind of like a mind-blowing
right I mean,
Pause. Whoa.
everybody imagine, let's stop and think about what the diet industry has come up with as a solution. And this is a food, stuff, liquid goop or bars or whatever
Pills.
that have full complement of all the nutrition you need, but reduced energy. In a biological state, can we imagine how in the world would we have adapted to that sort of thing? And isn't it much more likely that other kind of nutrition that's restricted in a real world where food is scarce, where you're eating a little this and a little that something else out there might be suppressing appetite? Because here's what a lot of people know now. 3 or 4 years ago when I was doing long-term fasts, everybody said I was nuts. And now everybody's got apps trying to see how long they can go without eating. But the problem is, in between pushing that silly button and looking how many people are eating the one meal a day, they're eating an enormous amount of all kinds of nutrition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen people try to get in, I don't know, an entire day for, it's insane what they try to get down. And it's almost like this feat to accomplish to eat all of that food in one meal.
But when you've gone through those long-term fasts, what you realize is that each day that passes, your body calms. Because headache, lethargy, lack of focus, irritability, these are not symptoms that help a starving organism find food. They're antithetical to going out there. It would mean that everybody, as soon as they were 3 or 4 days without food, that they just wither in the corner away. So one of those first things to think about with food is that in the process of always eating, your body is habituating, just like it does in circadian clocks, just as like it does with time zones. Your body's habituating. It starts. How do you know it starts? Because your stomach starts growling. Well, what is that? That is your stomach wrenching that food, kind of like wringing a towel, and your stomach muscles are wrenching that food. The fluid, the gastric juices are coming in, and we're starting to get that activity. Your mouth is watering because we're talking about some really amazing fruit salad, or like the decadent meal we had the other day with sriracha stuffed mushrooms over black rice was sake steamed kale, and your mouth starts watering. All of those are your body anticipating that meal. Why? Because getting food is a prime directive. And every time you engage that, you're engaging habit. It's really no different than some of the other things. It's no different than biting your nails. I mean, clearly there's not an evolutionary need to bite one's nails in that way. We're not like filing our teeth down like a beaver on a log, right? This is this sort of nervous anticipatory energy. And anybody who's ever bitten their nails and had to stop that habit knows that you can get really uptight. So the most important thing with food is to realize that it's habit, and to just change that habit. Change what you're doing every day. Change the routines up. You don't even need to eat at the same time every day.
And kind of like tying this back to circadian rhythm, your body gets used to certain things. So in terms of habit, there's actually a physiological response. So when you start that process where the stomach starts turning and leaving out or exuding those gastric secretions, if it knows that you're going to eat at the same time every day, because most of us eat around the same time every day, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 6 meals a day, your body kind of starts to anticipate that. And it's like it's on this clock. So I would say, Leah, that it's habit and it's practice, and it definitely gets easier. And I also want to add that you don't need, even we say less often, less frequently, but you don't need to eat 1 meal a day to lose weight. That's not, that's definitely not required.
Yeah, I ate 6 times a day. I did the Bill Phillips Body for Life. So while there are ways that you can optimize this, and I exercised every day too. I exercised 6 days a week. I was doing the high intensity interval training. I was doing the upper body, lower body rotation. Anybody that's done Bill Phillips' program knows exactly what I'm talking about. The lean protein the size of my hand and the carb the size of my fist. I'm using the P and the C words. Please forgive me. And then 2 meals a day, I added an extra serving of vegetables. The point is, I ate all the time and lose weight. You can do that, but I don't think it's the easiest way to do it, and I don't think it was, in my case, it wasn't a way that actually allowed me to become healthier, because my diabetes was worse after I finished that process, even though I lost the weight.
Right. And back to just doing it this way, all of our clients have different experiences, but I bet if you've started the day and you ate first thing in the morning, you'll notice you're more hungry throughout the day. That's a real common experience because you're like kicking off that process. And yes, if you were doing that every day, you would notice that, but sometimes less is more in terms of just getting used to it. But stick with it. Like you said, you're sticking with it. And maybe try doing two smaller meals in a smaller window, if that makes it easier for you. But there really is no perfect answer. And there's like all these theories out there and hypotheses, and we don't really, it doesn't really matter. The whole idea is just eat less.
Right. And if you go with the oxidative priority paper, you'll see a chart. I think it's figure 1, and you'll see that it's just about spending less time in the fed state. That's it.
Right. Give yourself some time off. So hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Suzanne. Okay, we're going to do this because everyone wants to know this. I'm going to use the P word because Suzanne W. just posted, all she wrote was amino acids / protein on vegan diet. So we have a million answers. We could do episodes and episodes and hours on protein, amino acids, and all of that. But simply put,
do you want
okay, let's do the broad perspective. First of all, it doesn't matter. You don't have to think about amino acids and protein. You don't have to chase protein. And what I've always said is that in the pursuit of more protein, this is where a lot of problems come in. A lot of overeating, a lot of eating things that are not healthy, namely the things that are synonymous with quote unquote protein, like meat and protein powders and all these things. And the only way, nutritionally speaking, that we have ever extended health span and longevity in all the model organisms that have been tested, yeast and worms, and all the way to the primate cousins, is with dietary restriction without malnutrition. And it looks like it is specifically due to the amino acid restriction. So there's a lot of reasons not to worry about it. And on the other side, I'm going to give you all the stuff that I say, and then Ray will dig deeper, is that all plant foods have all amino acids. So you can get all the amino acids from plants. Your body, uses and it breaks down a full-on protein anyway into its amino acids components once it's in your body, and then it rebuilds stuff as needed. And we're not going to store the excess for later, not too much of it. So you just get it. You just eat a wide variety of plants and not worry about it. It's really everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. So when we look at this, let's just break down what Julieanna just said, and let's take it one step deeper for those people who are still doubters. First, let's not bury the lead. Amino acids get concentrated up the food chain, and animals, organisms in their flesh have more density of amino acids, all of them, than maybe a plant does. And that is completely irrelevant. That is the part on the quiz that the professor put in the word problem that has nothing to do with the solution. So if you're looking at food and you're just saying, what is the percentage of protein, or, once it was, what's the nitrogen source, because they're amino acids, nitrogen containing, or if you're just looking at amino acid density, or thinking somehow amino acids, swallowing excess amino acids is going to somehow give you health, that is not really, doesn't be played out in terms of the science. So every cell in your body has tens of thousands of different proteins, plural, and those proteins are composed of hundreds and thousands, in some cases, of amino acids. In my first career at NASA, our goal was sequencing this chain of amino acids and then figuring out how that chain of amino acids causes, that's called the sequence, the primary structure, then the secondary structure, how do these things fold, and how do these things, then function. And all these proteins, this really long string of proteins, this really long string of amino acids fold up, and that globular blob of protein has very specific function. There are things, for example, called a functional group, a part of the protein that's active. And sometimes we look at for drugs that will block that specific group. And so the idea that these amino acids only exist in flesh is just crazy. And so let's just stop and think through this one step deeper. If those essential amino acids are only present in animal flesh, and no animal makes all 20 amino acids, meaning, so if no animal makes all 20 of them, where do they come from? And then the other side is, well, if plants can't eat, and not most of them, we'll throw out pitcher plants and Venus flytraps, etc. But if plants generally don't eat, where do they get their protein? So, the fact that people are not asking, where do plants get protein? And where do animals that eat plants get protein? And then everybody says, well, they have 4 stomachs. Again, this is switching. This is the bait and switch. Why? Because they have extra stomachs for fermentation so they can break down cellulose. So, real note to self for everybody, cellulose has nothing to do with protein. That's where do they get glucose. And even in that case, when they ferment it, most of that gets fermented to short-chain fatty acids. So the question then becomes, where do they get protein? And you know where all these animals, 5 species of rhinoceros, 3 species of elephants, giraffe, hippopotamus, agar, the most muscular species that walk, they get it using the same proteolytic enzymes that we do. What they do is they masticate those plant cells. Those plant cells rupture, and that's important because flesh has, and animal cells, those organisms have membranes, not that strong cellulose on the outside. They chew, they rupture those cells. That's what happens when you put your kale in your green smoothie. You're rupturing that cell, but you can do it just as easily with your teeth. Did you just
say kale?
I did.
Yum.
Kale, yeah.
Now I'm hungry.
So what happens is we rupture those cells. That releases all of the tens of thousands of proteins, plural in there. Proteolytic enzymes break that down, and there you go. And so all whole plant foods have all amino acids. Are they in the same concentration as all animal foods? No. If you're getting enough, does it matter? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. If you have an excess, do you have a protein storage organ? I think you can reach down and find your fat storage organ. We all kind of know that we have a glucose storage organ called our liver, and then we have secondary storage in all of our cells and our tissue, our legs, all our glycogen. Any runner that's carb loading, said the C word, but anyone's doing that, you're storing that. But you know what? We don't have an amino acid storage organ. We don't just randomly put on muscle, and any bodybuilder knows how hard they work to put on muscle. You can't just drink protein shakes and inject steroids and get big. And if they could, why would they be working so hard in the gym? So even the guys that most, and girls, that most defend this idea, they're really voting against themselves. They're saying, oh, you don't need to do all that work. You don't need to sling the weight. No, in fact, they don't have an amino acid storage organ other than that lean tissue. And most of what they swallow leaves their body as waste heat. Again, we discussed this in oxidative priority paper, within 4 to 6 hours after swallowing it. You get a spike in amino acid concentration in your bloodstream, and then it goes down. And what I did was, even 7 days into a water fast, I did my amino acid concentration every 4 hours for 24 hours. And it turns out those amino acids follow a circadian clock. They're up during sometimes, they're down during another time. When I did my long-term fast, my blood plasma amino acid levels were highest at the end of my fast. I wasn't low in anything. In fact, my B12 was through the roof. Why? Because B12 is very, very active in the process of amino acid and protein synthesis. So the fact of the matter is that if you eat enough food and get enough calorie, your body will extract the amino acids it needs. And if you restrict the amino acid to your diet, your body just recirculates a lot of the amino acids, because what happens when we do that digestion of amino acids? It gets dumped into urine. Urea is the metabolite of protein metabolism. So every time you urinate, and all the calls to drink water like crazy really comes from the fact that people are getting way more amino acid than they need in their diet, and they're urinating it all out. And the same thing can be said for the water-soluble vitamins, right? I mean, this is back to the B12.
Well, when there's excess.
Right, when there's excess. So, so here's the point. You don't really have to worry about it. And as soon as you stop thinking about the word protein in your diet, it gets a lot easier. I am not losing muscle mass, despite the fact that I'm not, doing any protein shakes or ever think about it. I just don't think about it. It doesn't matter. And that's such a shock, because when this thing got started, really, when this protein obsession got started, it's never, ever gone back. It's never gone back. And it'll be interesting to see if we ever get there, but I doubt it, because it's so profitable.
It's amazing to me that it's the first question that physicians still ask their patients. I mean, it is still the first question that everyone asks.
You were in the emergency room, and some horrible attendant physician in an emergency room over a cervical injury was somehow believing that you needed to eat chicken to regulate blood glucose. What a ridiculous thing to say.
Oh.
How does someone get out of medical school and they don't understand that? And, it's just so crazy.
I mean, worse, they almost killed me with glucose because I hadn't eaten in 3 days because I was in so much pain. That was the craziest experience of my life. They shoved my veins full of glucose and made me eat.
Exactly.
Force-fed me.
And then they weren't. Then they were. Were not surprised. Anyway, the point here is
they kept asking me if I had diabetes.
It was crazy.
I've had perfect blood sugar my whole life.
So
all right.
We don't need to worry about it. That's the end of it.
So don't worry. Just eat your plants.
Eat plants and don't worry about amino acids. And to give a hat tip to all of you athletes out there, there's probably another reason why whey and casein and some of these other protein shakes are getting benefits, because they're going to say, well, wait a minute, I'm seeing benefits. And the answer is probably yes. One, because it's fuel and amino acids aren't easily converted into fat, just like glucose isn't converted into fat.
What?
So that is a good thing. So It's not palling on the fat. And what we know is that IGF-1 and fasting insulin as an anabolic hormone, don't think about it as the fat storage hormone, as an anabolic hormone, insulin and IGF-1 are increased with certain amino acids, and probably whey and casein, meaning these are the primary proteins that are part of normal mammal milk, and they induce growth. And when we do tests with this, we can actually isolate them, and one of them increases IGF-1, the other one increasing fasting insulin level. And so there probably is an anabolic effect of certain proteins. I mean, it seems reasonable that mother's milk is going to hormonally, it's not just calorie, it's going to hormonally help.
But by the way, that's also what's the association between that and cancer risk.
That's right.
Certain cancers.
Out of control growth.
Right.
Right. So this idea that those exact amino acids, and so when we talk about these essential amino acids, leucine, valine, isoleucine, lysine, tryptophan, threonine, histidine, methionine, phenylalanine. I think that's all of them. Anyway, but the point is, in those, you eat the plant or you eat the animal that ate the plant, but those essential amino acids all originated in a plant at some point, or a bacteria, because they're obviously in the rumen of some organisms. As they grow, those bacteria are synthesizing the amino acids, and those, when they eventually make it further down the digestive tract, they end up getting some there. But that's it. So don't worry about protein. Okay.
So that's a perfect segue, because the Nick C asks, what do you both eat in a day typically?
Let's see. Well, it depends on if Julieanna is here or not, or with me or not. So if Julieanna's around, I'll nearly always have a salad.
I've trained you well.
Yeah. And I really enjoy making salads for her. I enjoy making amazing dressings. And so that's been fun. So we always would have a salad. I mean, almost always. If you're not around, I would say I would tend towards, well, I almost always have rice in the rice cooker. So kind of like an Asian home, I always have rice. Like right now, there's a whole thing of black rice that I made a day ago when it just stays for a few days.
And the house always smells so delicious.
Yeah, I love when the brown rice always
And this
smells
is
so good.
And
in
this
the
is that
rice
black
cooker.
rice. It's
Yeah.
so yummy, fragrant.
I eat a lot of beans. I love beans, black beans. I love to, I like other kinds of vegetables more than salad. So I would tend towards Brussels sprouts and cabbages and cooked food. So more of like what I did that thing with the black rice, the sake steamed kale, and the sriracha stuffed mushrooms.
That will live
I would
in
do that.
infamy.
I love soups. I made soups a lot more frequently before I met Juliana, just because I just would always have those in the freezer. And I just ate those more frequently than that. And we usually start with more fresh stuff. But probably a giant salad and then one kind of entree if you're here. And if you're not here, it'll just be one meal. Almost always it would be one meal if you're not with me.
It's interesting because we have like either we're traveling. I mean, nowadays we're not, but we were, it just changes depending on where we are. And if you're with me in LA or if I'm with you in Alabama. But yeah, like when I'm here, I'll eat anything you make me. Usually, you make me some delicious meals and you kind of don't want me to cook. You just want to cook and show me how amazing your skills are. And I do love that. Oh. I get spoiled when I'm here. But when I'm back in LA, I am a creature of habit and I like the same things. And I really do love a big salad every day I have. And I eat usually once a day usually. Sometimes I'll have 2 meals because my daughter likes me to eat with her. So sometimes I'll have lunch when she was in school and then we would have dinner together. But lately when she's there, we'll just have one kind of biggish meal, or I'll have one biggish meal and then I'm with her and then she does her own thing. But salad always. And then now I'm really obsessed with, so in the Healthspan solution, we have that mushroom wild rice bisque, but I've changed it and I've kind of combined that with the mushroom gravy, the magic mushroom gravy. So it's basically this it's a cauliflower rice with tons of mushrooms. I think I've talked about it here because people are asking me for the recipe. I've got to write it down for you guys. And it's just like, it's kind of like Thanksgiving in a bowl. So that's kind of one of my favorite. I literally can live on that stuff with my salad on the side, and I'll make that chipotle cheesy butternut squash as the dressing for my salad.
Yeah. The other thing I do when you're not here is I eat a lot more fruit. Because you're not a fruit person. So I'll get tons of bananas, tons of watermelon. In the summers, tons of watermelon, tons of papaya. I'll just eat fruit. I just love that. And the other thing I also used to do way more frequently is I would make things like the eggplant rollatini or even the rotel broccoli bisque. And I would have that meal several times in a row. So I would tend to, let's just say leftovers. Mm-hmm. So I love
leftovers. I always batch cook. Like when I make either that cauliflower rice, or I'll make a soup, or I'll make, my daughter loves stir fry, but we go through that like really quickly with tofu. But I will make like a huge thing of soup, and then I'll put some of it in the freezer and I'll put some of it in the fridge and I'll eat it that day. So like I definitely like to batch cook and have leftover. I love leftovers. And then what I love is like buffet style. So I love having, if I have my this and my that recipe and this recipe and it's all put together over salad. That's my favorite way to eat, like that big bowl that we have, like just, it's bigger than your head kind of a bowl and just stuffed with lots of veggies and deliciousness.
Yeah.
And always a good sauce. You have to have a good dressing or sauce. That's the key.
Food is a sauce delivery system for you.
Correct. All right, let's go on. So, Jonathan F, and then Eva Z emphasized, what whole food plant-based foods to avoid when the goal is to lose weight? Do you want to start?
Actually, it's back to our first question, eating meal frequency. And so if you're trying to lose weight, just recognize that you've got a metabolic bank account and you have to make some withdrawals because you've got a lot of savings. We're very efficient. We evolved in a calorie scarce world. And so it's one of those things that you just need to not swallow so much. And I hate to put it so basic, but that's what it comes down to. And the fact of the matter is, at this point, anyone could challenge me with any food, and it doesn't matter what food it is. You can pick the most decadent, fattening, crazy food you want, and I can lose weight on that food, and I will zero in. It'll take me about 5 to 7 days to figure out about how much I need. And then after that, I will lose weight every single day. And I know I can do it. It didn't matter when I did the test that I was doing for a book. It didn't matter whether I was water fasting or eating nutritarian or eating the starch solution. It didn't matter. I could lose weight the same amount on all of those. And so it's not what you're eating as much as that. Now,
well, there's the other side of this. And I know that a lot of people out there do this. I've done it. But Ray calls it vegetable stuffing, because if you really wanted to do, there's a lot of people out there that will say, you could eat tons of this food and not gain weight. And so it's kind of like a little challenge. How much can you eat without gaining weight? So that would be like removing, all the oils and the fats and like just sticking to mostly vegetables. That's why you call it vegetable stuffing. And you can lose weight by eating more volume. But the problem with that is that it kind of perpetuates like that desire, binge eating. Yeah. Let's just, say it like
put
that.
Put it out there. It's these people become obsessed with swallowing massive amounts of food. And then yet they'll point to it and say, but look how healthy it is. But then all it takes is that one rare and appropriate that triggers that person to say, oh my gosh, this is a decadent food I used to love. And they eat too much of it, And so this, I don't like that approach, because I want us to teach people how to eat a normal quantity of food to get enough.
And we don't want to eliminate things. Like there's, we really believe in the 6 daily threes and making sure you're getting 1 to 2 ounces of nuts and seeds a day, because those are really important. Anyone that tells you that nuts are not healthy and necessary, it's not true. I mean, we need those. There's certain things in there that are unique to nuts and seeds, certain nutrients, and having some fat is important in a diet. So we have that. We have the legumes, so like 1 to 1.5 cups of legumes every day, and then all the vegetables and fruits and stuff like that.
And when we look at food and flavor, part of this is, I don't want to be that person that wants to take all of the decadence and flavor out. On the contrary, we're working to make food more flavorful. And that means it needs to have a well-balanced palate. And that well-balanced palate isn't the results of, scientists trying to get you addicted to awful food such that you're going to overeat. No, it's people presenting foods with different flavor profiles and seeing which ones bring the most joy to the taster's mouth. And the point is that joy can be used to make you eat sour cream Dorito chips, or it can make you love sriracha stuffed mushrooms or eggplant rollatini. So you can have bitter and sweet and salty and all of umami and all those really amazing flavors. And part of the other thing is how flavors develop in the mouth, and oil, plural, that come out of food, whether it's from biting into an avocado or a nut or seed or a steak for people who are eating meat. The fact of the matter is those lipids change the profile of how that food tastes. And to just simply say, oh, does your recipes have oil? Like this, if this is the only question you're asking, I don't know that you're going to find health. I really don't, because honestly, it's such a superficial nothing question. That's like saying, do your recipes have sugar? All these keto people, do they have sugar? Do they have sugar? Oh, potato, it's sugar. This is such a reductionist way to look at food,
yes.
And it really isn't
accurate.
The salient feature of health. The fact of the matter is, when we look at a wide range of centenarians around, and we correct for the genetic factors, that most of them have all kinds of food. And that includes animal source food, which we don't recommend. But I can't change the science. So the fact is that, just using a teaspoon of olive oil in a Cape Cod salad is not going to change the health profile of it. Because I could have also put olives in a couple of our recipes. In the dressings, you'll notice that we actually used olives instead of olive oil. Why do we not like using olives? Because they have a lot of salt on them. So we usually rinse them off so that we don't get excess sodium. But there again, salt actually makes food taste better too. The question is, can you eat a small enough amount of it that you're not hypertensive?
Right. And then actually, this is a good segue to this other question that Janet BV asked. because it's kind of the same question, but she said, if the goal is weight loss, as long as one eats from just the recipes in your book, can you eat until satiation and still lose weight?
And the answer is depends.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
and habits.
Well, what is satiation? If you've been a vegetable stuffer and you've been following these people that say, "Oh, you can eat as much as food you want and you lose weight," which they don't. They all do something behind the scenes. They don't do it. Lots of people. I can tell you, there's a lot of people out there that we could have a really good discussion on at some point that recommend crazy stuff, and I think it's dishonest. But I don't bother myself in outing this stuff. But at the end of the day, if you've conditioned yourself, so let's think of it as conditioning. Do you write with your right hand? Do you write with your left hand, right? There's part of that that's sort of innate where you naturally have a natural proclivity, but you could also learn. There's lots of people that learn to throw both ways, to skateboard in both directions. Are you goofy foot or standard foot, right? So the fact of the matter is you can learn a lot of things. It takes a time to go against those habits, but you can. If you've conditioned yourself to eat huge volumes of food, the answer is you can probably gain weight on some of the foods in our book.
Well, you can gain weight on anything.
Not on any. I'd say not on
enormous
anything.
amounts of certain things,
but
most things.
I would say you're not going to gain weight just eating potatoes. You're not going to gain weight just eating steak. I would say almost everybody is going to lose if that's all they're going to do. And I'm not saying that you should necessarily do either one of those. What I'm saying is that there are foods, cauliflower. If you only have cauliflower and broccoli, no matter how delicious you think it is, and you have no fat source, and you're in the wild and you're really surviving, you will lose body fat every day. But in reality, you have just enough that you're able to replace it because it doesn't take much energy to fuel a human being over 24 hours. That's what's really going on here. It's most people are carrying around hundreds of 12-inch pizzas with them. And even if you're lean, you're still carrying dozens of them. Months, most persons can go 30, 40 days in a fast, even if they're lean. So what I'm trying to say, back to answering her question more specifically, is that the answer is, how much are you swallowing? That's what it really comes down to. And I don't care if you're eating Twinkies or California Bowl.
Eat Your Greens Bowl.
Eat Your Green Bowl.
It was the California Bowl, but it turned into Eat Your Greens Bowl. Yes. Okay. So and actually another good segue into this question that Julie S. asked and Alicia L. seconded. And you kind of addressed this at the beginning, but it'd be good for us to kind of continue on this, is what advice would you give to someone with years of diet mentality, restriction, weighing and measuring food, counting calories, and disordered eating about how to switch from diet mentality to lifestyle transformation and ongoing health span optimization?
The first step is to just recognize you're not broken. I mean, just imagine, just stop for a second and think about it. I'm not broken. Appetite isn't a trait of negative selection or an organism that evolved in a calorie-scarce world. So let's just stop there. You're not broken. Your appetite's normal. And the problem is that you just have an enormous access to food. That's really the problem we have. And in fact, that enormous access to food is why we can eat a whole food plant-based diet. Because in the wild, you eat whatever you can find. The paleo's kind of got that part right. But in the wild, Mother Nature's done with you around 45 or 50 after reproductive prime. So, for me, at 55, I still want to do lots more things. And I want to mitigate that accumulation of age-related disease that comes probably at the cost as a trade-off of being successful reproductively. So stop thinking about the broken mentality. Stop thinking about the metabolism mentality. Stop thinking about the calorie. And what you're going to need to do is be very simple and direct in your food. Find things that you enjoy, any of our recipes in the Health Span Solution. Eat an amount of that food and stop, because it's going to take a while. You're not going to learn that in a day. And the next day you have to sort of do the same. And a lot of times when we're trying to, not a lot of times, all the time, when you're trying to make a new habit, the key word for new habits is repetition. And it's practice perfect. And we're going to have a plant perfect practice week at the end of our automated lifestyle transformation 42-day program. We're going to have a week's worth of practicing this. And what's really going to be interesting as people go through this is how many people really can change their lifestyle for 42 days. It's not very much. It's a very small percentage of your total number of days you're going to be alive. But a lot of people can't get away from eating interruptions.
And I agree. Like, I was just writing for that class. I was writing about habit and repetition and all some of the science behind it. But I would say to you, Julia, that like there's something very empowering to think that the food isn't that powerful over you at all. Like you have complete control over every bite, as you know. And what happens is when you practice this and when you repeat this and when you see the results of this and how you feel and you go and get your lab work drawn and you're at a healthy weight or whatever your goals are, when you're there and you're validating all of this and how it affects you in your body, it basically gives you that confidence to know, okay, I could let go. I don't have to count. I think it's just this exposing it at first, getting rid of all of that chitter chatter. There's so much chit chat, chitter chatter. I don't know if that's a word. All that chit chat about, oh, eat this, eat that. How many meals and eat more. And all of those conflicting and loud voices that you hear everywhere. If you just kind of let go and kind of take a step back and just say, you know what, I trust my instincts. And then you see the success day after day, month after month, year after year, where you're feeling better and you've gotten it all under control. That's where the confidence comes in. And that's where you could easily just kind of break free from that.
And most people aren't gaining weight all the time. If you think about it, how many people, you're listening out there, how many people, raise your hand, are 30, 40 pounds or whatever it is, over what you think you should be, but you really haven't gained any weight in the last year. So at that point, you're eating at stasis. You may be eating more than you need, and you may not be eating enough to gain. But if you were really eating over more than you needed every single day, everybody would be 400 or 500 pounds. Everybody would. And what we found from our clients that have weighed that much, we don't take people on that have that much to lose, but a lot of them lose a lot of it and then come to us for sort of the last stretch. We focus on how to eat, not to gain, not on how to lose, because losing is just, you're not eating, you're not swallowing so much. And so one thing that is going to need to be true if you want to lose, you're going to have less focus on all of the eating part of it in general and finding other things to do with your time other than swallow. And for a lot of people, they then think automatically, and they do this because of calorie, they then introduce wiggling. And so now we need to wiggle more. If I wiggle more, I'll mitigate swallowing too much. And the answer is no. If you wiggle more, you're going to actually generate more appetite, and you're going to want to swallow more. That doesn't mean you can't lose weight wiggling and swallowing. It's just not the easy way. You can get to Florida from New York heading north. It's just the long way around. Why make it so hard? So it's just, the fact of the matter is that if you'll just not focus so much on that and just get onto a schedule and stick with it for a month or 2 months and don't participate in all the other kinds of stuff and enjoy your food and assume, hey, I'm not broken and these meals taste good. Any one of the recipes in this book and plant-based nutrition, I would say, our Idiot's Guide, with the exception of the ones that were the ones for running and the high-calorie things, and some of the desserts probably are not the things that I would pick as a main meal. But any of things that look like normal kinds of entrees, soups, outsides, and sweets in the fruit sense, any one of them, you can pick it and just, eat a few of these and just say, okay, everything's fine. I'm not going to starve. I'm not going to die. I don't need to obsess about my next meal.
All right. Well, I think a great last question. I mean, we have so many good questions here. We're just going to have to do part 2, I think, because I have a date with my children. So, but Marcus G asked it's kind of a perfect way to end this. He said, I'd love to hear an in-depth discussion between you and Ray about backsliding. It's come up a few times on your podcast. Penn talked about it, so did Jessica Kroc. For me, it happened after I'd been happily and successfully on a whole food plant-based diet for a year. I'm not back on track, but I fell off the wagon for about half a year. And, well, he keeps going. I wish I could give some great advice for other folks that it happens to, but my recovery was as mysterious to me as my backslide. But since the backslide and the recovery seemed out of my control, I'm worried it will happen again.
Yeah, so Marcus was a client, and he's an amazing friend. We went through this whole process together, and I can't remember exactly how much weight he lost, but it seems like it was 40 or 50 pounds. And Marcus, what I would say, and you know what I would say because I've said it to you a lot of times, is that, this backslide, what happens? This is when the concept of rare and appropriate, which is about people and places, not time between events. And so let me backtrack for everybody else, and then I'll come back to you, Marcus, which is if rare and appropriate is the concept of cheat days, which means you can, I'm going to allow myself to have cheese pizza every 7 days, or every 7 days, or every Saturday I take a cheat day. What ends up happening is you become obsessed with planning in the future some kind of behavior that caused you problems in the past. And that is just a really bad attitude. We have other clients where we talk about the same thing. They can't wait until they're going to have this deviation. And I'm thinking to myself, and really saying it out loud, if you're obsessing right now over something that caused you problems in the past, your priorities are really messed up. The real question is how do you find your new favorite food? So bringing back to Marcus, what I would suggest is this. There are a lot of reasons we give ourselves excuses of why we slid and slipped and slide, going to Thailand, or it was somebody's birthday, or
we're writing this book.
We're writing the book, right? So there's lots of things. But the truth of the matter is that rather than create these excuses or reasons or even talk that way and then try to beat yourself up about it, the point here is that you just need to correct. Start today, whatever it is. Start today, correct. And the question is, what are those moments that you slid? What were you eating during those times? And how can you create new favorite foods that supplant that urge to do any of that? So for me, for example, people have heard me say it a number of times, I've had enough cheeseburgers. I don't need whatever burgers either. There's some times that we did the burger formulator because it was popular and, having that in the book. But I don't need something that tastes like that. I have had so many cheeseburgers in my life, it doesn't matter if I have another one of them. It's just not the thing I would waste a meal on at the moment. And I know that for some people, that's your obsession or whatever. So you want to get the whatever burger to replace that. But here's the point. For me, what I looked at was the experience. What experience am I getting when I'm eating a pizza? What experience am I getting when I'm eating a burger? Now, part of it is holding that thing and taking the first big bite. But part of it is the lettuce and the tomato and the onion, how they crunch together. Part of it is, after you've chewed it up, it's no longer in its form. It's just all of this stuff in your mouth. And I can get all of the experience by having a nice bowl of black rice with some really fresh cut Vidalia onions that are in right now. A little bit of Wickles relish, some mustard, stone ground mustard, a little ketchup. Sometimes I'll do a blob of just on there if it's in the summer and I'm having tomato sandwiches and my mom has made us our batches of our mayo. Like we had mayo in the book, right? I think we do. Anyway, a mayo, and then
I have to look.
I'll put a blob of that on there. And you know what? Once it gets into my mouth, I'm having all of the experience chewing and all of the same flavors than I would have. I just not picking it up on 2 slices of bread and putting it up to my mouth. But to me, I get all the experience. So the question is, how do you create 100% of the experience and make it, so let's say the scale 0 to 10, and we're going to do this on Rare and Appropriate, the health scale 0 to 10 and the experience scale 0 to 10. And so how do you create something that has, say, a health span of 7, 8, 6, but not 2? And then on the experience, it's a 9 or 10. And for me, hamburger rice, which I promise you guys I'm going to be eating as soon as I finish this recording, I promise you that hamburger rice to me is every bit as enjoyable as what it used to be to eat a burger.
It's kind of crazy how good that stuff is. Like
It
I was
really
like,
is.
oh, I don't know.
I mean, kids loved it growing up.
By the way, for the record, mayonnaise, page 241.
There you go.
Healthspan Solution.
I
And I
thought
like our mayonnaise recipe actually.
Yeah. I mean, my mom
better
always
than
has it in the refrigerator at the house, and everybody who's gone to mom's or grandma's house, my mom has this most amazing refrigerator in the world. I can't wait till things get back to normal because going over there and sitting down,
paradise.
it is. I mean, she
just
always has amazing food. But Marcus, it's really about creating those new favorite foods, and just don't go back to the other stuff for now. And if you think you can't give it up, then you should. I always say this to people. Oh, I can't give up cheese. Well, then you probably should. I can't give up wine. Well, you probably should. Well, I can't give up burgers or sushi, even me. Then you should for a while. And if I had an issue with sushi, I would never eat it again. But I don't. I can have it sometimes, and it's very, very rare, but that's it. I'm done with it with that. And so I just think the biggest focus here would be for you to create those new normal foods that you really love and that aren't going to put on the weight.
I mean, yes, I second all that. I think that I think we got to stop, unfortunately.
Q&A.
Thank you guys for your questions, and we'll come back to the others and we'll ask again in different pages and poke around. So stay tuned, and thank you for joining us on this leafy green path to good health.
It's always the food, so remember,
keep eating right.
Thank you for listening to Science and Saucery. For more details about the content in today's show, or to contact Juliana and Ray, please visit us at healthspansolution.com.
Welcome